Good morning, everybody, and welcome to In the Now with Jim Swilley. And I would like for you to please welcome our very special guest today, Prophet Calvin Witcher. Would you say hello to Calvin?
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for being here.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Good to see you. If you are watching us via YouTube, we're coming to you live from Metron, and we're honored to have Calvin back with us again. And I'm just gonna get right into it. Let me just say this for the Metron people. I am still in the middle of a series, but next Sunday will be part 6 of that. So just hold that thought, and we'll be back there. I'm sure some of what we're going to talk about today will be influenced by what we're talking about this month, because it always, when Spirit puts it all together, the Holy Spirit is the divine officer of protocol.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you think something is a fluke or whatever, and then you think, oh, wow, that really... Well, even something like you being here, this
Wasn't planned.
It wasn't planned. That
Nope.
just happened that Pastor Judah's here with us this month, and that you're here, and it worked out. So we already see a lot of synchronicity happening. Let me get right into this. I want to show you this verse of Scripture, and then I'm going to pitch it to Prophet Calvin, and we're going to talk a little bit. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Solomon had some issues. I think he was
He has
bipolar.
major issues. Yeah.
He had 700 wives and
Yeah.
300 concubines.
Well, that part wasn't bad.
But once in a while, he would tap in and just say some amazing things. And chapter 3 of what we call chapter 3 of Ecclesiastes is probably his crowning achievement. The first 8 verses, of course, is the very classic "To everything there is a season." And you're familiar with that. This is, I believe, verse 50. Verse 11 is where he has planted eternity in men's hearts. I mean, some very, very cool ideas. This one is Ecclesiastes 3:15, and this is from the Amplified Classic. When you see AMPC, that's the Amplified's been updated a little bit. I prefer the Classic. But let me just show you how it says it here in Ecclesiastes 3:15, the Amplified. It says, "That which is now already has been, and that which is to be already has been, and God seeks that which has passed by so that history repeats itself." Go. What meaneth
You all think
this?
this is funny, but this is actually very true. Like it's always very spontaneous. And what do you say, Prophet? So this is good.
This is what's interesting about. This is the reason I want to talk about this, and let me tell you why I use this verse.
Yep.
I want to bring some clarity about prophetic ministry because I am very much about teaching people next level.
Yes.
Not just sitting around waiting, thinking that God's up to something, but that you have the power. The divine has created divinity. So I try to steer people away from, trying to figure out what God's up to. I would rather say God's looking at you saying, what are you up to? And I know you believe that.
Yes.
But I
absolutely.
also know that there are some things that are happening in your life that are beyond your control. So I want to find where is the balance, because the reason I want to ask you this is there was a time in my history with prophets is people depended so much on just tell me what's going to happen. I know you even do tarot card readings.
I do.
It's
I didn't
very
bring it up today,
interesting
but-
how you have married that and with no apology. I think it's not something I know a lot about, but I think it's very interesting, and I love that you're not afraid of it because, from my background, I think even from your background, that kind of thing was frowned upon. Whereas now we realize, well, prophetic is prophetic. I mean, it's no, the knowledge of the Lord fills all the earth. What I'm asking you is, where do we find the balance between going to a prophet and saying, "Tell me what's going to happen," do you understand what I'm saying?
No,
Where
it's an interesting.
it takes the responsibility away from somebody, because sometimes people put it out there to say, "Well, I got this prophetic word that I'm getting." Like Kim Clement prophesied I was going to get $1 billion. Well, what does that mean? Somebody's going to write me a check for $1 billion? No. Probably what it means is I have the ability to create wealth, and there might be a potential to take it that far. It's not just this absolute that's floating out there in space that's going to come to me. Prophecy speaks to our potential. What this says is everything is everything. What is now has been, what is going to be. It's all now. Mm-hmm. We're living in the now. So just flow a little bit on that.
Well, it's interesting because even the first part of that, that which is now already has been, and that which is to be already has been is actually one and the same. It's actually the same word, kavah. So it's interesting. to us, we don't really understand that because you would never say like Calvin, or store. You would not say it that way. So the structure of that is even interesting because the connotation is that that which was in past is in the now, and that which is in the forward is also in the now. So it actually negates that which is we're moving forward into, and that which we've moved from. We're here. We're in the space of now. So to bridge that into the prophetic, it's interesting. I will say I'm at this stage of my old age, I guess, in the prophetic, where I guess I'm not too thrilled by a lot of the prophetic is actually two parts too. There's actually a foretelling, and then there's a telling forth part. Most people get stuck on the foretelling. You're going to get a house. God knows your name. Spirit should know your name. Hopefully you know your name, and if you don't, we need to seek help with that. Spirit knows your address, and I've done that before, and it's great. A lot of this is mostly awareness. I'm very keen on the atmosphere, the people that are there, and some things with the prophetic is very much predictive, and some people don't like to talk about that because they think it pulls away from the spiritual, but there's very much a mentalism that goes into it.
Which, by the way, I don't remember if I told you this. Hold that thought.
Yes.
But last time you were here, you gave a word to somebody, and you mentioned something about they had just lost a loved one, and the guy didn't know his father had died that morning. He didn't have his phone on and had not heard that. So you had tapped into that, but the point was
and
not
talking about it,
not predicting there's a death. It's the point was there's a word for you,
right?
But the fact that you were accurate about something that had happened that he didn't even know had happened sort of validated that so that he could receive the word. Go ahead.
No, that's perfect. And I tell people like you need to take notes with me because when I am there, and most of my team knows when I kind of tune in, I'm just there. So make sure you take notes. And so that's a really interesting state because that's definitely a foretelling. It's like that which I'm seeing, I'm definitely aware, I'm picking up on it. And then there's sometimes that spirit kicks in and says, shut up. And that's the other side of it, which is very much the novice prophet, I would say, is very much keen on what do I need to tell you? What do I need to say to the people? It's very focused on that because there's a big performance driven, especially because many people don't believe, and so you have this weird egoic thing that you have to teach people and train people how to believe. And I'm kind of just beyond that. And so the other side of that is to not say, what do I need to tell people, but what do I need to hear? So there's a extreme amount of silence. There's an extreme amount of waiting. Sometimes you'll see me looking down, not because I'm scared or whatever. It's just because I'm tapping in on my hearing to say, what is important now? And so you do. And I'll say, so that's definitely the first part of the prophetic, which is very much the telling forth. The other part is, or the foretelling. The next part is telling forth, which is what's in you. Let me pull it out of you and mirror it to you so you see what your future is. Or what I like to say is what your possibilities are. And that's the interesting thing about the prophetic is that most of the time, most of what I think Spirit is presenting are possibilities. That which was in the past, we experience, we understand. A prophet brings clarity. You went through this crappy time in 2008, and Spirit wants you to know that it was because of A, B, and C, that which was. That which is coming is that you have a house coming to you. You have your family that's going to be coming, and they're going to be saved, pulled out of drugs, whatever the situation is, that which is for. But all of that's happening now. The future actually is quite irrelevant in many different cases. That which is coming and that which was is both here and now. It's interesting because we say all these scriptures, and I love the scriptures, and I quote them a lot, but we don't really understand a lot of the power beyond it. I said this on a live stream this week that the problem with a lot of the church, synagogue, sanghas, whatever you want to call them, now is that we no offense, we went through the season of very pastorally driven information. Pastorals are based upon relationships, and prophets are based upon revelation. There's a difference. And so when you look at the scriptures in a relationship driven thing, you become very, very personally invested in the process. God becomes yours, Spirit becomes yours. It's the only way that it can be. Prophets don't really see it from that perspective. God belongs to you, and God belongs to you, and God belongs to you. God was there. He's going to be there. She's everywhere. It is what it is, in a sense. So when you go back to certain scriptures, like in the beginning, God created. There's this process where God is thinking, God's imagining, and God then spoke. The interesting thing is God is not progressively speaking. It just doesn't happen that way. In the spiritual world, you don't even operate that way. You already have your Monday planned out. You're already planning to be frustrated tonight. You already know what you're doing for vacation. You're doing so many things that you are planning, but you're already there in Cancun. It's already happened. That which is to come is now. So when God speaks a word, he speaks all words. And the thing about the prophetic is understanding that this has already been spoken. It's already been created. I'm just helping you to understand which path do you want to go in the creation. So it forces you to be extremely aware at every particular avenue, because this, again, was not planned, but maybe it was. It was predestined before the foundation of the world, because many things had to happen. Someone had to make this suit. I had to get this from Nepal. This place had to be built.
And there's a multiverse. There's
a multiverse.
There are parallel realities. This day could have gone any number of ways.
And still can.
And still can. Like there's a skeletal outline of it, but then we add the flesh and bones. These bones can live again.
Absolutely.
And we're constantly speaking the dead to life and making things come alive. But this, like you said, this day can go any number of ways. I am curious, when you say Cancun and gestured that direction, were you prophesying somebody's going to Cancun? Because I think a couple people were trying to grab it.
So we were talking about Cancun, right? Something with the sea.
All right. Anyway, go ahead.
No. You'll know when I start prophesying.
I didn't mean to interrupt your flow.
No, it's okay. We can always pull the flow back in. It's okay. So from that particular dynamic, you don't get hung up in any particular situation, because all things work for the good for them that love God, that are called to the purpose of the path. So anything can happen. I love it. It's fine. You can imagine however where you need to go. So things like sickness and sadness and frustration and even death cease to exist in that space. And it seems where, and I will admit, it seems a little cold and callous, which is where a lot of prophets weren't taught over the years, that when you reach that certain level of spirituality, emotions just drop off. There's no, even we say God is love. Spiritually speaking, what does that mean? God is all. So in a sense, God is love and God is not love at the same time. God is void of it. He's not possessive of it. God's not, on Prozac and somehow is selfish and somehow is needy and needs all these things. He's got to be. He's not defined by that. And so on the prophetic side of things, you learn to look at life very much in this scripture, that what was past needed to be there, and it was part of my journey.
It's very interesting you said that. Finish your thought, because you just opened three windows in my head.
No, it's fine. What happened in the past needed to happen. Now, I'll say the theological consequences of that I understand, because then you have to wrestle with things like cancer and death and frustration and child abuse and molestation, and I get that. And so I'm always very careful, especially on a prophetic level, to guard what I say. And even then, I will still say yes. It was, at some level, it was needed. Because there are plenty of people, even though you may not have the revelation of it, that lost their child by a drunk driver, and then all of a sudden they created new laws that changed the course of the future, what is then, what is now, in this present state. So all of those, for someone that is aware, going back to that state, you start to understand, how can I find purpose in this rather than what is the purpose of this? It shifts your perspective, because I'm not looking at anything I did in the past as a detriment. I'm looking at it as a different revelation of God figuring out God's self. And it becomes a game.
That's processing the sixth day before you enter the seventh day.
Oh, do we talk about that? Oh, very, very good. So it becomes this processing chamber, and my mind is going all of the time. I'm never without a word, because you're never without a word. This is the fun thing. I don't have to prophesy, because you're always projecting something out there. Really, all I'm saying is, oh, I heard what you said. But you heard what you said, so in a sense, it's not really mysterious at all.
Hold that thought for part
Yes,
two.
part two.
But I want to say this before we go, because what you just said about God is love, God is not love. This is very interesting, because
Someone's upset, I'm sure.
a few minutes ago, when Judah sang, he sang Imagine, then he went into Blessed Assurance. And I was noticing people's reaction. There's something in us that wants to worship a higher power. Yes. I could tell people are really hungry for this, and they wanted to worship. So I think, well, yeah, I get that. I wanted to do it. I wanted to raise my hands. I wanted to worship. By the same token, you think, wow, was God that needy that he had to create beings to tell him how wonderful he was? Because that kind of sounds, that's what you wanted, is like, talk about yes people. It's like, I want people to tell me how wonderful I am. And there's a balance. The truth is somewhere in between those two things. Something in me, it's like I want to take responsibility for my life, but I need a higher power. So when you sing Blessed Assurance, it's not just a soulish response. Something in me wants to be assured in something bigger than me. But by the same token, I don't want to spend my whole time worshiping because I think, well, that's not what God wanted. God wanted to strengthen me so that I could go do what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
When you say, I just want to spend all day long in worship, I don't think God would want that. I mean, you know what I mean? We
You need to
all
go to
love and affection and sex and all that kind of stuff, but you don't want it all the time. You know what I mean? If somebody said, I just want to lay in this bed with you all day long, you'd be like, well, at some point,
Preach, Bish.
we probably,
Preach.
I mean, it's good, but, don't you want to, like, take a break? Why don't we get up and brush our teeth? Or let's go get something to eat, and I'll meet you later. But so, no, all I want to do is just love you all the time. Not really. Ladies, what's really hot is a guy that's got a job.
Wow.
You say, I just want a man that loves me all day long. No, you kind of want a man that loves you and then get up and goes to work. That's sexy.
Go get that coin. Yes.
Anyway, we have a lot to say. This is what you call a cliffhanger. We will see you next time on In the Now with Jim Swilley. Tell Prophet Calvin that we're happy he's
Pastor,
here
why not?
today. That was good. That was good.
How are you feeling?